I see her texting away. We're close. Hello, any of you guys here are on already?
Hi, everybody.
Today we're gonna have some fun. Whew, we've been cooking all day. Woo!
We've been cooking all day successfully with the food.
So we're good. Hey, all right, awesome. So we are. All right, we're live. All right, I don't know if we should start. I guess we should start talking. So I'm gonna all right, I'm gonna start with just one really quick, just set up Zoom logistics for those of you who haven't done a lot of Zoom or because I needed it. So for our conversation, if people want to ask questions, ideally when you log in, at the bottom of your screen, there's a little, it looks like a little like cartoon, whatever, cloud thing, and if you click on that, it'll open up the chat window on the right hand side, and then you can see all of the notes. And then there's a tab that says whether you're going to send questions to all panelists or to all panelists and attendees. And so our request is if you just click on all panelists and attendees, and then that way everybody can see everybody else's comments. So that was the one logistical moment I was supposed to add. So I mean, if you don't have to, otherwise just Ed and I will see them, but we'll probably miss them. So if you guys want to have a conversation, if you want to talk amongst yourselves, that's the best way to do it. So that was my logistics to get us started. And Simon is very excited, one for the cat people. And all right, so today's plan is going to be, we're going to start talking about Feldspar versus Slate. What is the difference? How do we make them? It'll be a nice segue from blending last week. Something a little more insane. So take it away, Ed.
Great. And food-wise?
Oh, food, yes. So we had great ambitions of having a cooking show. When you have a cooking show, you have people who do all your prep for you and then actually produce it and know how to do it. So we got all the cooking done. Look, here we are with our first. This is your Feldspar pairing popovers, little blue cheese popovers. We use Bay Blue, but we don't have all the logistics of how to share that with you quite sorted yet. So it's coming soon, probably like next week or during the week. No, somebody asked, are we seeing you? You see us, but we cannot see you. I can see Zoe only, but I don't even know if anybody else can see Zoe. So yeah, because the way it's set up, you can lounge, you can come and go, you can be in your pajamas. Nobody can see you except for you can see us. So that's just the format that we use. So it should be fine. Yeah. So someday maybe we'll do one where we are all seeing each other, but for now it's just like a seminar. You're just looking at us. There goes the cat. He doesn't even want to hang out with us. All right.
Great.
On to the wine.
All right, and of course there are some Slate 5 first. We have two of our wines that are in release right now, the Slate 5 and Feldspar, and Feldspar 4. These are two of our non-vintage wines, meaning they're often a mix of different vintages. So just quick from last week, we talked about the rules are 85% from one vintage, you can call it that vintage. So it's 85% 16, you can call it that. These are both, I think, around 80%. The Slate 5 is 16 and the Feldspar 4 is 17. So they're close to being a 16 and 17, but because they change the mix every year, we just do them by numbers. And there we go. So I'm going to start with the Slate 5. We have it, again, two different glasses, a bigger one and a smaller one, just to try. Lovely nose. This is the part where we toot our own horns and drink our own bathwater and say our wine's good. So good.
So we need our kids to come and tell us how annoying we are for looking at our own stuff. All right, let me smell yours. See if yours is good too.
Yeah, it's this one. So the Slate 5 has got, it's about half Cabernet Sauvignon, and then the rest, the other, without Malbec, the other three, Cabernet Franc, Merlot, Petit Verdot. It is a little bit more, I guess, elegance driven because of that Cab Sauv, but really nice. I'm really happy with the way that one is aging. We'll get to questions of when to drink this in a minute. I think we're going to try the two of them and then go from there. All right. So wonderful fruit in that one. I think some really nice length. The tannins are still a little bit on the astringent side for me, but Sarah's loving it. I can tell already. I don't have to worry about that. She likes them young. And so cradle rubber.
And yeah, it's really nice fruit, nothing off in that wine at all. So and maybe a little bit more. Well, we'll see. Let's get through our Feldspar. I'm guessing the Feldspar is going to be a little bit more. I'm going to use a wine word here, but a little more exuberant, more sort of fruit-driven, I guess. A little bit good dark fruit on the nose, a little bit lusher. This reminds me more of a New World wine on the nose, which is interesting. And yeah, very, very different wine. In this case, the Feldspar more on the New World side, Slate a little bit more on the Old World side, but they go back and forth on that. The Feldspar to me is definitely driven by young fruit, so it's got some time to calm down, I think, a little bit in the bottle before it really hits its stride. And it's got that forward kind of fruitness for two reasons. It's about half Merlot, and Merlot tends to be more fruit forward, more upfront on the palate, and darker on the nose than Cab Sauv would be, but not quite as long or elegant. The other is it's 17 versus 16. 16 was a more classic Old World vintage. 17 was a little bit warmer, hotter, a little more New Worldy, so we get a little more fruit-driven wines in 17. But I'd have a hard time deciding which one I would drink right now. I think,
label. Sorry.
I guess long-term,
here's the label. Somebody has to see the label.
Yeah. Both of these are going to age beautifully. Look at that label backwards. It's kind of funny.
Well, at least it looks backwards to us. I don't know. Yeah, somebody has to see the labels. And then here's the Feldspar IV. So you can tell. There you go. So, great question. What is the difference between Old World and New World? Okay, so backing up a few things. Okay, thank you, Vicky, for being on my side. You are correct. Anyway, I can only read some of them, but there you go. So important early question. The cat who was visiting is Simon. That was the name of the cat. So that was the shout out to that one.
He's a black ankle cat.
He is a black ankle cat. Yes, he's related to all the black ankle cats. Basically one of many. There was a question of what is Old World versus New World. So that's a term we throw around a lot. And do you want to take that on, or do you want me to answer it?
I'll do mine and then you do yours.
Okay.
In the Old World, wine has always been part of a meal, and so the idea is to create a wine with enough structure to handle the changes in your mouth that happen when you eat, and sort of complement food. And so you get wines that are, this is classic. Not every Old World wine is like this, and not every New World is like I'm about to talk about them. But so that was sort of the way those wines evolved. The New World wines are often meant to taste good on their own rather than with food, and those are very different things. There's a real hard sweet spot in there in the middle to do both. But if you're drinking a good rule of thumb, if you're just sitting around a party and you want a glass of wine, you're not going to be eating any food with it. Choose a New World wine. Usually they'll be a better match. Because they're sort of made for that reason, and there's lots of history why that is, and a lot of it's wine critic driven and other kinds of things. But so what happens when you get a very fruit driven wine is it sort of interferes with a lot of foods rather than complementing it. Old World style is more structure driven, and that structure not only doesn't interfere with the food, but it calms down and becomes less salty of your palate, I guess, when your mouth changes with food. And you'll get wines that aren't particularly great. A lot of Old World wines, a lot of village Italian wines. I remember we went to a little way back when, a little restaurant in Italy once. Yeah, back when traveling was a thing, and we went to this little restaurant, and I think they had 3 bottles of wine on their wine menu. And I said, well, I don't know, which one would you recommend? They said, oh, you should have the house wine. I said, okay. And they brought out it was literally a plastic jug of wine that looked like It
Brown.
looked like iced tea, and we thought, oh no, what have we gotten ourselves into? And it was okay. It was much better than it looked. We drank, had a sip too, and then we had the meal, and with the meal, it was just wonderful. And yeah, it's partly it was the evening and the night. We're in Sicily, okay, but it was clearly a wine that they didn't care what it tastes like on our own, but with that great Italian food, it was fabulous.
All right, so I would pretty much agree with Ed on overall versus New World. I mean, so first of all, and maybe this is obvious, but we're talking about overall, we're talking pretty much about Europe.
Really loud.
Sorry, really loud. Nobody's ever asked me to be louder before. This is very exciting.
It's a red letter day.
Okay, let's be louder. Okay, so by old world, for us, mostly we're talking France, kind of the styles that you'd find in France. So, France, Austria, the grapes we grow, their kind of most famous home is France, Austria, Spain. Yeah, that's pretty much it, right? That we grow a lot of French varieties. Albarino is Spanish or Portuguese, depending on which part. That's kind of that little corner of Spain and Portugal together is where Albarino is grown, usually. And then the Grüner Veltliner is Austrian. So when we talk about Old World, we're talking about the styles of wines that are grown in those areas. And as Ed said, throughout history, those wines were really made to pair up with food. They're also those areas are generally more wet, I guess, than a lot of the New World growing areas. So when we talk about New World wines, we generally are talking about in the United States, California, Oregon, and Washington, where most of the wine growing, even though we think of like Washington as a rainy area, the wine region is a very dry area for the most part in Washington state. So kind of desert wines. And also New World, New Zealand, Australia. South America is a little on the fence in terms of the style. But for the most part, when wine started to be grown outside of Europe, it was grown in these more deserty climates. And so that climate has led to a style of wine, which is very different than what the old style was. There are goods and bads to it in terms of what that does to the wine. People like both. There are times when one or the other may be better, depending on what you're doing. Like Ed was saying, like if you're just drinking it as a cocktail or just drinking it by itself, sometimes a wine that's tons of fruit and really overwhelming and kind of absorbs your whole palate is great. If you're trying to have an interesting meal with it, sometimes the wine and the food start to interfere. So again, it's a little bit of there's not like a who's better or who's worse, but it's a little bit of a style difference. So when we say Old World, what we usually mean is a wine that's it's generally going to have more acidity to it. Like we feel like more balanced, sort of fruit and tannin and acid are going to be kind of more in line with each other. It will generally be a wine that tastes good when you drink it on its own, but when you drink it with food, it will taste a lot better. So that's kind of our big distinction. When we talk New World, we are probably more likely referring to kind of like big, juicy, fruit-driven, maybe sort of like overpowering wines, which will be better, most likely better on their own than with most food. Sometimes they do great with like I don't know, like a big fat steak or a burger, or like there's certain meals that they do well with, but in general, they're going to tend to compete with your food a little bit more. So that's kind of the distinction that we're making, old versus new. So, and we partly because of the style we like, and partly because of the growing region we're in, we tend to make wines that are closer to that kind of European style, basically because we have rain and because we don't have super hot summers or super hot falls when we're picking. And then we talk about different years. Some of our years when we have a much hotter, drier summer, our wines will move more towards that New World style, because you're going to end up with, it's kind of a question of how much sugar is in the fruit by the time it tastes ripe. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. And in a very hot climate, the sugar levels go up very fast. And it's kind of a weird thing, but for grapes, they can be ripe at very different percentages of sugar. So sometimes we've got wines that are not going to be high alcohol because there's low sugar in them. but they have tons of flavor and they're ready to go. And sometimes it's going to take longer to get those interesting flavors. So I don't know if that kind of makes it more confusing or not, but I think that's enough on old versus new. So I see shout out, and Chanahasset, Minnesota. So there's a shout out to the friends from Minnesota joining. Hi. You know, we have a soft spot for Minnesota because that's where Sean should be in college, except that he's here now. so shout out to friends from Minnesota. I see that on here. So thanks for joining us. I feel like that's like our reach is extending. It's so exciting. Anyway.
We had a couple questions about, some of you said, I have a slate that has no number on it. I have a Feldspar that has no number on it. No. So when we first made these wines, we just called them slate. We didn't know it was going to be one. And we called the Feldspar, we didn't know it was going to be one. We just made them. So the original slate is a blend of 2007, 2008, and 2010. So we've talked a lot about that in the last few. It's drinking beautifully right now. Yeah, we probably bottled it in 2011. Yep. Yeah. So it's maybe the only one that we've made with 3 different vintages, and I'm not sure. I'll look about that. It's the only one I can remember right now. The original Feldspar, I believe, was a blend of 13 and 14. I think
it was bottled in 15.
Yeah,
I would have to double check our notes, which I can't do, or I'll get off Zoom. Sure. But I think it was 15. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the Tax and Trade Bureau, which is part of the government that regulates wine labels. If it's a non-vintage wine, they will not let you put a date on it of any kind for the vintage. So we've always wanted to say 70% 2013 and 30% 2014 on the labels. We submitted that and they dinged it, said you can't do that. So a couple of years ago, we did decide that we could put the bottling date on them. So now the slates and Feldspars will have a bottling date on the back. And you'll see, at least you'll know when it's bottled, and you can guess it was part of the last couple of vintages. We're going to try.
We only came up with that recently, so that's what I'm on.
You know, it's a crazy rule that for other reasons, I guess, makes sense, but in our case, doesn't make a lot of sense. But there was another question about Feldspar versus Feldspar.
Yeah, and then which of the wines, whether we think these wines are old world or new world. That was sort of a clarification on when we got into the old. We got on the tangent of old and new. See, this is the beauty of being in your living room. You can just talk about whatever you want for as long as you want.
There you go.
Sorry.
So Feldspar versus slate. So we have our Crumbling Rock. That is our classic Bordeaux style wine. It's the wine we're trying to make like a left bank Bordeaux wine. We have slate and Feldspar because some things at the blending table don't fit into that mold, and they fit into another mold, and they're not better or worse, they're just different. So we came up with slate originally to make a wine that didn't fit our Crumbling Rock mold. And then in the, I guess it was 15, in the blending, when we ended up with 3 different wines that didn't really play well together, but were great on their own. And we decided that we would call the next one Feldspar. The Feldspars typically are a little more New World in the way that we've been talking about it. We think they still go well with food, but they're going to be a little more fruit driven. I think if you were drinking these 2 right now, it's definitely more exuberant, I guess, in the fruit sense. Slate has this big underlying structure to it. Feldspar is like, more your best friend right away kind of thing. They're both going to be wonderful wines to age and drink now and drink later. I'm really happy with them right now. So,
that's good.
But Feldspar is going to be a little more New World. There's a question about Feldspar 3 versus Feldspar 4. It's been a year or so since we had Feldspar 3. But I'm guessing that this 4 is going to be even more exuberant than that one was. That was a really nice wine, but because this has got so much 17 in it, 17 was just it wasn't quite as New World as 2010 was, but it was the second most New World vintage I think we've had. So
there's a question up about how do you know if a wine should be decanted before being served? So to my mind, there are 2 reasons that you would want to decant a wine. One is if it's just sludgy. So if you just see that the wine has a lot of kind of graduate. There's some actual word for this, but like, gunk in the bottle. I think gunk is
a
the
good
official
word.
term.
Take it.
None of that's
Sediment.
harmful, sediment, but it just feels a little meh. So if you decant it, and that's most common, you can see that in any wines, but you'll generally see that in older wines. All wine over time will start to drop some sediment. It's very normal. It's the tannins coming out of solution. It's part of why the wine starts to taste a little softer and mellower over time. But if you don't want that in your glass, if you decant it slowly, you can try to start with a clean wine and then have just less of the sludge left. So that's kind of like the nuts and bolts practical reason. The other is what decanting does is it speeds up the oxygen process. So it's kind of a way of aging your wine a little bit, like a little bit on hyperloop. So like a speeding up way of aging it. So if you have a sip of the wine and you're feeling like it's a little too Sarah style, so like a little tight or a little tannic, a little maybe you're feeling it on like the edges of your mouth a little too much, so it's a little overwhelming in that kind of tannin zone. If you decant it, it will pick up a lot of oxygen very quickly, and then if you give it a little time for that to kind of absorb into the wine, that will soften the wine a bit. So basically, it's really I don't know if you would have a different opinion, but it's really like a dealer's choice in terms of whether you should or shouldn't decant it. It's kind of what you want out of the style. So if you want that little boost in terms of like you wish you'd opened it, you'd waited a little longer to open it, then the decanting will kind of help with that. You need to wait a little while for that oxygen absorption, but like an hour or two. It doesn't have to be days.
Yeah. And the mini decanting is the swirling in the glass. If you don't decant it, swirl it a bunch, keep it swirling it a bunch. Yeah. It's sort of the same thing as decanting it, but you're doing it in your individual glass. So, so I'm gonna.
So frost. I'm just reading the questions.
Oh, yeah.
More about the
Frost.
two wines. I see a question about
okay.
frost.
Quick on frost. We've had 2 nights where we got very close to frost lately. I took a big walk of the vineyard day before yesterday, and we got the tiniest little bit of frost on very edges, lost essentially no fruit. We skirted it, which is great. In part because the vines aren't all the way budded out yet. If the new shoots and leaves were 2 to 4 inches long, anything below 32 degrees would really zap them, and it wouldn't kill the vine, but it would kill the green growth. More growth would come back. The vine would be fine, but what comes back usually has practically 0 fruit. So we'd end up growing a bunch of vines all year with no grapes at the end. So that is a bummer. When we've got things that are out, maybe the Chardonnays may be out an inch at most. Then, yeah, and so you've got this leaves. First leaf is starting to unfold, but the grapes and the second leaf is still inside. To frost that, you need to get down at about 25, 26 degrees. We did not get near that. So we should be good. We have one more frost event, I think, tomorrow night or the night after. There you go.
There's a Chardonnay today.
Yeah.
It's so teeny, and they're pink
Yeah.
right now.
So we just have to dodge. I think it's 2 nights from now that coming, but it doesn't look too bad. And then our frost season usually goes through about May 10th, maybe May 15th, but you get less and less likely. And then already the forecast through the beginning of May is pretty good. So, yeah. Knock on wood.
There was a note saying that there was some worse frost in Virginia. So this is something we run into a lot. The farther, just like I said, the farther ahead the vines are, the more susceptible they are. So sometimes, even though they're in a warmer area, it may not have gotten as cold in Virginia last night as it did for us, but they were probably already like farther ahead on the growing. So yeah, we're kind of on pins and needles till it's really the middle of May before you're sort of officially frost-free.
Sarah makes a really good point. In 2010, 2007, both really good vintages here. Virginia got whacked with frost because they had 3-inch shoots where we had 1/2-inch shoots, and the temperature is about the same. So they got whacked. We didn't. We had a wonderful vintage. They had a wonderful vintage there too, but almost no fruit. Especially the more southerly you got in Virginia, the less fruit they had. So yeah, it's an
Yeah,
interesting
let's talk,
way it works.
Sorry, I'm smiling at the questions. And
So
I
I thought you were smiling at me.
Sorry, I'm reading the questions because I love it when people like set ourselves up like, oh, I hear you can buy Feldspar magnums. Is that true? Like, funny you should ask. I think we still have some Feldspar
three
magnums available. The fours?
Yeah, not yet.
We have in Magnum. We have a few Magnums, but they are not yet available. But yeah, there are the threes available now. So I love it when you guys take care of all that for us. Thank you. I forget who said it because it's off my scroll now. But yeah.
So
then, yeah.
I want to pivot for a second to food pairing because while you've been talking, I have been eating these. So these are our little mini blue cheese popovers.
Right.
And we also made a.
Yes.
This is our leek and goat cheese quiche.
Yep.
Or tart, if you will.
So that was those were pulled directly from the Williams-Sonoma cookbook. We're a big Williams-Sonoma cookbook fan. And we have posted, I think in the last email, and then on Facebook or the usual places we posted the recipes. We spent the whole day making a little cooking video showing us making it, but we have some editing issues, so we're gonna get that up at some point soon. We have that. You want to show the other variations? And
shout out to Mike and Lisa. Mike, if you're watching out there, we really needed your post-production skills today. Next week we'll have Film Nation do the post-production for us. Anyway,
can we show the other variations?
Yeah, go. There's right there. So while Sarah's getting it, so we still in the oven. Actually, take it out if you want. We made a couple of other tarts to go with it, but while Sarah's getting the other one, we decided to try to make a vegetarian meal to go with our red wine because it's not often that's a pairing that doesn't happen all that often. So I just want to talk for a minute about wine pairings. We're not huge believers in making the perfect thing with the perfect thing. You can drive yourself crazy kind of do something like that. Oh, look at that.
It's like a souffle.
It's like a souffle.
All right, so this. There you go. Can you see it?
It is. Got so much cheese in it.
Yeah. So this is. We tried to make two variations, so the leek and goat cheese, which is the first one Ed showed you. That's like the official cookbook version, complicated, etc. This was like my cheater or McSkeeter version. So instead of dealing with all the leeks and everything, we just used eggs and we put in the herb cheese from Shepherd's Manor because it already has all the herbs and everything chopped up for you. You don't have to do anything. It makes it really easy. And a little cream and a little eggs. Anyway, that made this like kind of poofy, but it really souffled up. Yeah. And then the last one we did was for our carnivorous children where to go? Oh, it's not so hot, yeah. Who really are not going to want to eat anything without eating it. So this is the Black Ankle sausage version. So that was kind of following the recipe online, except for we snuck our sausage in instead of leeks. Anyway, those were the three versions.
It was great.
So that's kind of
so we with red wine, you often say, oh yeah, red wine with meat, white wine with fish. That I can say I don't really agree with. It's really about the sauce often that you put on that, and really what it's about is that red wine goes really well with dairy, and especially cheese and cream and things. So with a red wine, you get a lot of tannin in it, and it tends to be a little astringent sometimes. That gets smoothed out by fattiness, by cheese, by all the things in cheese and cream and things like that. So with a thing like this leek and goat cheese tart, it's beautiful with a red wine. These popovers usually, I guess as a wine pairing, maybe I would have a white with, but because they have the blue cheese in them, blue cheese just goes beautifully with red wine. It's just a little tiny bit, but I just had a bite of that and a sip of that Slate 5, and wow, does it smooth out that wine? It's almost like you age that wine another 5 years. The way the food makes it taste. So yeah, it's good. I wish we had our post-production skills were better. We'd be eating this with you right now. So
that's great. And I love the little cheater option of throw your wine in the blender for 2 minutes. It's like that's awesome.
Oh, I've never heard that.
Somebody just posted.
That's awesome.
That is awesome. See, like there's a shortcut for everyone. I'm telling you, we did all this. you know, we didn't do it the hard way. We made our own crust and everything, which goes against much of what I believe in, but it is really tasty. So that's pretty funny. Oh, that's great.
Really great.
There was another question.
So there's a question
Oh.
before about how do we decide how long to age red wines in barrel, which, because we're talking about slate and feldspar, which often have long aged wine in it. It's good. It's a great question. I'm going to just tell the story of so when we ferment a red wine, we throw all of the grapes and into a tank, and the juice is clear. So you can make a white wine out of a red grape if you press it very quickly and get the juice away from the skins. All the color and the tannin is in the skins itself. With a red, you ferment that all together, and as it's fermenting, all the color leaches out, all the tannins leach out, and it's much more complicated than I'm describing it. But that's what you're trying to do, yeah. And so then when you've decided it's been long enough, it's time to run the wine off. It's called. You open the big valve, you let all the wine run out. And what you're left with is a bunch of wet mess of skins called pumice. And that pumice still has a lot of wine in it. There's still a lot of wine in that wet skin. So you shovel all that, you put it in a press, and the press squeezes that and squeezes the wine out of it. That's called press wine. We at Black Ankle always keep our press wine separate because it's very different than the stuff that comes out on its own, which is called free run. So with that free run, our crumbling rock is almost always 100% free run. Slates and feldspars tend to have a lot of press wine in it. And press wine is often fruitier, it's bigger, bolder, it's also more astringent, it's also lower acid, it also tends to be
often lighter because all the color is leaching to other.
It's not as dark, but it's let me use the word spiky, because when we taste it, you want a wine that's complete and beautiful all the way through the palate. The press wines often do this.
And so they have some really good elements and some really lousy elements. So like they just need a little coating.
Yeah. They have a lot of spikes with them. So then in 2007, it's a great vintage. That press wine, and we usually blend all of our press wines together of all the Bordeaux grapes. We keep the Syrah separate, but the 5 Bordeaux grapes press wine gets put together. 2007, we tasted the press wine. We said, wow, this is really good, but it has on the palate, it has almost no fore palate, very little mid palate, and then a huge spike at the end. So Sarah and Lucy and I sat there and said, yeah, we tried to blend it with some things, and we'd put 5% in, and the whole rest of the wine would then have almost no fore palate, almost no mid palate, and a huge end palate. And it's really interesting. You would think you'd take a wine that was pretty, that had it was great all the way through, like a crumbling rock type wine, and you put a little bit of this wine in, and all of a sudden the fore palate and the mid palate disappear in the crumbling rock, because I guess this is the way it works in your mind. It's about comparing those. It's not about how good they are. It's if one's out of whack, the other ones seem really low and not very good. So it unbalanced every wine we tried to blend with it. So we just kept it in barrel for another year. The next year we came to blending, we had a bunch of this. 2007 had been in barrel for 30 months. Exact same thing happened. It unbalanced every single one we had.
And I'm going to stop you for 1 second. And that is surprising, because usually if you come to the barrel workshops, you know that usually time in barrel will really soften a wine. So it's not uncommon that a press wine will be difficult to deal with at its first tasting. So 18 months after we've barreled it, but usually by the next year it's completely softened and it's mellowed out and it's a great element. So that's just kind of a carry on, but a footnote.
Yeah, barrels are magic about things like that.
Mm-hmm.
They can. We called it. We had this corner of the winery, and we called it barrel detention, and it's what it is. We sort of stick the barrel there until it behaves, then it comes out. And this one went into barrel detention for 12 months, came back out. We threw it back in detention. It was so badly behaved. After 42 months, so 3.5 years in barrel, this stuff finally mellowed out and was beautiful. And when we could blend it with something, it is the base of the original slate.
Right.
So that is that is not the kind of wine we would usually put in a crumbling rock. I'm not saying never, because we'll do anything that makes our wines better. But that kind of wine usually is the base of a slate or a Feldspar. It's one that has been in the principal's office for a while and finally gets released.
A little naughty is good.
Yeah,
sometimes, right?
exactly. Yep. Reformed.
Reformed. Right, but it is funny because what went the best with that was a very young wine. So for one of the first times ever, we bottled it with a 6-month-old red. Right, that was the Slate one.
Yes.
It was so. And that is usually the reds spend 18 months in barrel before they're ready, but for whatever reasons, the
Cabernet Sauvignon.
Yeah, that Cabernet Sauvignon from that year, just the way the fruit was, it just really balanced with this older wine. And that's what came up with the idea of Slate. And again, that's why it has a number. The first one didn't even have a number because we thought it was a one-off. And then other years we're like, oh yeah, we liked it. You'll see that a lot. We think something's just like, oh, we'll make it once and then we like it. And then we have to figure out how to do it again. So anyway, so that's kind of the backstory of that.
Just quick question. We got a question. Is pressed wine the same as Ripasso? No. Ripasso is a Italian way of making wine. We don't do it at Black Ankle, right. But you pick the grapes and you actually put that. Often they put them on mats on their roof in the sun and let them dry until they're raisiny, and then make wine with that, and then mix it with some new wines. So it's very different. Press wine is something that every red winemaker does, has to do. So
there you go.
Great.
There's a question about Chardonnay. Should we answer it or should we make them wait till next week?
No, let's answer it.
We are going to talk about white wines next week. So it's going to be all about white wine and how we make them and how we age them and all that. But we could let you in. We could talk about Chardonnay a little bit.
Yeah.
So you want to talk Old World, New World? What we think? So
yeah, go for it. Where was the question?
It's just what would we describe our Chardonnays as, more Old World or New World?
Oh, definitely Old World, and trying to get more so. We've actually changed as of 16, I think. Yeah. We changed our Chardonnay methods. We can talk more about that next week because it will take a while. But we've changed to a more Burgundian method of making them because we love those wines. New World Chardonnay has the reputation of being more buttery and woody. That's not what we're going for in our Chardonnay. Sorry, Mom.
I know.
My mom loves those wines. Sorry, but very different in that.
There you go. Yeah. So we'll get more into that, but we would definitely say, I would say overall for that style.
Yep.
Yeah, we can talk about that.
Great.
Let's see.
We had one.
I missed a question on here. I know. I was supposed to be wearing the sweater. I haven't finished the sweater. It was a busy week. I need a few rainy days so I can finish my sweater. Next week I'll wear it. Maybe. Thank you, Mel.
So we've gotten
really giant.
We have a bunch of questions about when to drink the slates and Feldspars. So I guess again I'll go with Sarah and Mike, both slightly different opinions on this. They're all of them are doing beautifully right now, and I don't think anybody would be disappointed if you liked them if you bought them because you liked them. I think you will like them even better now than you did when you bought them. So we're very proud of that. How long will they age? We're guessing because we don't really know. I would say the Slate one, the original Slate, is probably at its peak, and I would drink it. And again, shout out to anybody who wants to drink it with us. Bring it on.
Come on.
It's great. The other ones, I don't know. I haven't had Slate 2 in a couple of years, or Slate 3 in a year or so. So I think they're going to be great, and I would guess they're going to be great for quite a few years longer.
10 years easily. I think it's not. There's no big rush to drink them. Yeah.
For better.
It's kind of again like what you like style wise.
Yeah. We one of the big surprises I think that we have had in this endeavor here is how well these wines have been aging. Our red wines have been aging really, really well. Maybe next year we'll talk about Sean, you can come in and steal it. Yeah, so we've had some good surprises. We had a few bad surprises. We can talk about that next week if you want. But one of the surprises is how well yeah, we can have a whole set, that's true. But the way the red are behaving is really nice. So we're delighted about that. So happy anniversary.
All right. Never. Oh yeah, if you have a Slate 2, never drink it, give it to me. So Michelle, why did we change our labels? I know. So we only changed half of the labels, and we just decided a few years ago that we wanted to brighten things up a little, change it a little bit. So, but they're controversial because some people miss the boots and some people don't like the script. I mean, miss the script.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know if it was a good move or not, but
Yep.
you know, we always have to shake things up a little bit. So
Yeah.
that's it. There was no.
Yeah.
There is no real.
We made you. Sean's eating all the food. Of course, fair enough. Sean made me did cook most of it.
Oh, the corks. Did we change the corks again? Oh, there's Nelly. You're just like she's just setting us up. It's okay. We need it. We did. So we're on our third attempt at choosing a favorite kind of cork. So all the old vintages up until I think 2 years ago have just regular corks. Then we did a couple of years where we've used these the sugarcane corks. I guess they're not cork stoppers, which have kind of good aspects and bad aspects. They're good in that they can't get cork taint. They can't hold the chemical that causes corked wine. So we like that about them. They're very consistent in terms of air penetration. So we know kind of exactly what to expect in terms of aging the wines. But they've had a few downsides. They feel a little plasticky, which they are recyclable, but we don't think people know that. So that's kind of a bummer because they think they're getting thrown away. They're made from sugarcane, so they're not like a terrible plastic, but still, whatever. And you can't use a Coravan, which is like the little needle that goes in and lets you just take a little sample out. They're harder to get in and out of the bottles. So there's some kind of just very practical reasons. That we decided we didn't love them. So this year, for the first time, we're trying a third method, third option, which is DM. That's the name of the company, but it's an aggregated cork. So they're kind of the fanciest ones that we've tried yet. And it is cork, but somehow they chop it all up and then they test it all again for this TCA, which is the cork taint smell. And then they can put them all back together. So that's what we just bottled. So we've just used those for the first time with the 2018, the 2019s, because the 18s were already gone. So we'll have to see how they go. So yeah, a lot of people are using Jam. I see that comment, Michelle, and you're right. It's definitely become a popular option. So we'll have to see. We noticed when we were bottling that sometimes the corks chip a little bit when they're going in. So some of the wines have a little, they look like there's dust in the bottom and it's a little tiny chip of cork. So you may see that when you get the whites. It's fine. It's just cork, but it's kind of frustrating.
We'll figure that out.
We'll figure that out for next year. Yeah.
Okay.
So here is, can you say something about Virginia versus Maryland? Why are there so many great wineries in Virginia and fewer in Maryland when they're just across the river? Great question. That's going to have to be.
We're trying to change that.
We're trying.
Yeah, it's a community thing. I mean, I think I was really, I really prefer our soils and in lots of ways, the growing conditions. But when you get a certain mass of wineries and you start to get a reputation and all of that, it kind of feeds on itself. So it's a lot easier in a lot of ways to start a winery in Virginia than it is in Maryland, because you have to do everything yourself here in Maryland.
And a lot of it is history. I mean, it's kind of silly. And people ask a lot about even just why there's such a huge wine industry in California. I mean, and one of the questions we get a lot is, gosh, can you really grow in this climate? I mean, wine comes from the desert. And in the United States, that has been true for a long time. Wine has grown in the desert. The reason that happened is really much more an accident of the history of prohibition in the country than it is to do with good growing conditions. And that's another whole long talk in and of itself. But in a nutshell, the compromise when prohibition so there was a pretty serious wine industry on the East Coast up until the early 20th century. And then when prohibition came in, there was a 10-year span where you weren't supposed to grow wine or produce alcohol except for home use. So a few vineyards survived. And then the compromise that was made when prohibition was ended in 1933, December 5th, 1933, red letter day, was that the states could decide. So the country was still torn on whether or not to let alcohol be produced anymore. And it was left to the states. And the West Coast states, much as they are now, and particularly California, were very loose about a lot of things. So California said, great, no rules. You can grow alcohol, you can grow wine, you can make alcohol. There's very little regulation. And a lot of the East Coast states were still much more of kind of like a puritanical, whatever mindset. There was a lot more resistance. And so the rules were much stricter. And again, I could go on and on. History is kind of one of my favorite things. So, but the fact is those industries developed a lot for accidents of history, more so than for realities of climate or anything else here. And it is true, Maryland versus Virginia. Virginia is a much bigger state. It has a much bigger agricultural economy. It's driven, so the agriculture interests have had a lot more success. And they passed a farm winery bill years ago. They set up a system where if you grew a certain amount of fruit, you could automatically have a winery. And that was a huge boon to the wine industry there. When we started in our vineyard at Black Ankle in Maryland, we had all kinds of crazy hurdles, not to be allowed to grow grapes or to make wine, but to be able to sell wine. So we went, and you will hear us whine about this if you let us get started, and I'll try to keep it short. But the process we went through to get permission to put in a tasting room or even to put in a winery was the same as if you wanted to put in like a car manufacturing factory. They're like, well, you're making something, it's a factory. You have to have road signs. You have to change there was all kinds of stuff we had to go through. And that has all changed now because Maryland has, as a state, gotten much better kind of behind the wine industry. And a huge shout out to the Wineries Association, who really has done a ton to help that happen for us. But we were kind of one of the guinea pigs back 15 years ago to make a lot of that happen. So it's kind of a long story, but there's a lot of reasons that had to do with just like neighborhood and system and everything else that have changed. That drive why the industry is so much farther ahead in Virginia. And it is really helpful to have neighbors who have stuff you might need. I mean, just like you might borrow a cup of sugar, like we have to borrow stuff from our neighbors or share equipment or have suppliers that come in and anything else. So once an industry starts, it's easier to have it grow.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah,
that's my rant on there.
Yeah,
So.
the environment's it's gotten much better in Maryland. One quick example, I think a year before we opened our tasting room, in Frederick County, the law finally changed to allow tables and chairs in wineries. Before that, you could not have tables and chairs in a winery, in a tasting room. Imagine how different your Black Ankle experience would be if we could not have tables and chairs. Mm-hmm. So but it's gotten better, but because of that, Virginia got off to a much better start. I don't want to forget, happy anniversary, Pat and Phil.
Oh yeah,
fantastic.
Yeah, next week, so 32 years, happy anniversary. And we are having our whole crowd cake dinner just to celebrate your anniversary, so we can all celebrate together. Yeah. You're welcome. We thought of you. No, we didn't know ahead of time, but if we had, we would have.
I don't want to go too long.
Oh, we're getting late.
A couple of quick updates, and then Sarah will talk some about next week things. But
okay.
Vines at Live Edge, we have planted about 30,000 of our 36,000 vines. Yay! Can't wait. I hope, knock on wood, we will finish this week. And then we'll have 25 acres planted at Live Edge. Just for those of you who look around Black Ankle, we have about 55 acres at Black Ankle. So we had 22 when we started. So it's a big planting at Live Edge. We're kind of excited about it. And also, especially for those of you who have come to pick up wine and cheese and other things, thank you very much for helping us stay in business during all this. And there's our little vine.
This is I think, if I found the right one, I think this is the vine that we cut the roots off 2 weeks ago to show you. It's a little petit Bordeaux vine. There was a little sleuthing to make sure I found the right one, but I think it's the same one that we showed you. We marked it.
We'll do some updates on it.
It's in the ground, which is good.
If you came by Black Ankle, you saw the huge construction site between the parking lot and the tasting room. We are digging out that hill. We are making a new patio. If you come by and you see it, we're in the process of building a little 2-step walk up to this patio, and the steps are going to run the whole length of it. So you'll see this beautiful little S pattern thing that we're building in the ground, and then we're busily working on what we're going to use to cover that patio, and about to, I hope, get our permit to start putting up our shade sail. So we have a lot of work to do the next couple of weeks.
The number one question we get is, are we getting rid of the pea gravel? And the answer is, we hope so. We're trying really hard to find a better solution. I think so. There will be something different,
Yes.
but it is complicated to figure out. So that's what's going on down there.
I'm gonna go with yes.
I know, he's so much more confident. I'm always a little nervouser, more nervouser. So there should be something good. There's like, I wanted to see what you'd say about the pea gravel. We've been fighting over it a lot, trying to figure it out. Now, we've been trying to split something that will be drained and you can still walk on and it's hard and we can afford to do and all that good combination of things. So it's coming along. Should we do like upcoming things? Okay, upcoming. So yeah, we weren't sure we'd be able to fill an hour and here we are, blah, blah, blah. So this week at some point, look for our home cooking show.
Posted on, yeah.
Anyway, and I'm all about, I missed now who had said I need the cheater options, but I'm all about the cheater options. It's full of shortcuts because I am all about the shortcuts in cooking, really. So upcoming events, we are trying to bring back yoga in the vines. I think we may only have Emily in the vines and everybody else can do it from home, but we're working with Emily Lodge, who I think is Emily Lodge Yoga. You guys can type up the exact website or whatever for her, but you know, she is our on-site yogi who usually does the yoga in the vines, and she's gonna
and Christina's sister,
right? Inside, right? A little trivia tip for those who didn't know. There she is, my sister. She is she's gonna come out and do one of her awesome yoga sessions, and then film it or Zoom it or post it. The details will come. And we're gonna, so it's, you know, we're missing that. And I know we need ways to relax and like make the most of this time. So we're looking forward to that. And I know next week we are having the Pat and Phil Happy Anniversary crab cake dinner. So, and I would show you the crab cakes, except we ate them and I forgot to get a new set for this week. We showed you last week. You can look at last week's video. But they're super good.
Really
And
good.
it's I mean, the portion is for one, but like you could kind of share it because it's pretty good, but don't, because you're really going to want the whole thing or leftovers, just saying. So we are suggesting that you pair it with the Albarino. We are bringing out the 2019 Albarino because it's really good. So you know, we are saying that you, of course, you can drink it with whatever you want. It pairs awesome with the 19 Albarino. We would say that that's your move, and I think that's what we're going to do. So
it's the first of the 19 ones that we're going to release, and yeah, the shape of things to come. 19 was a fabulous whites and reds.
Yeah, so we are excited about that coming, and I think, I mean, it's on the website if you pop up leftover crab cakes. Exactly, really. I know, I had to fight Sean for mine. I got one bite, but anyway, got the bite. We'll be ordering about 10 for our family. So anyway, we're excited about that. Oh, and on that, if there are folks who are in Baltimore, the restaurant itself is in Baltimore, and so we have made a deal with them.
Nick's Fish House.
It's Nick's Fish House. You can look up the address if you want to see if that's closer to you than coming to Black Ankle. You can pick up your dinner at Nick's, and you can pick up wine there as well. So if you're interested in that, just, I think on our website we actually have like buy the dinner to pick up at Black Ankle or buy it to pick up at Nick's to help us not be confused. But if you'd rather pick up in Baltimore, let us know and we can get your Black Ankle wine to them and you can pick it all up in one spot, just in case Baltimore is easier for you to get to than Black Ankle. Not that we don't all have time on our hands these days, but you never know, whatever makes life easier. So they've been great to help us with that. So we're excited about that for next week.
And one last plug on that, we talked about it last week, but the watermen have really been hurt in all this because crabs are mostly sold in restaurants or for big parties, crab boils and things, and neither of those things can happen anymore. So they're really struggling. So we're doing this in part to help that as well. Yeah, so we were excited to think of a way to eat a lot of crabs. So that's good. That's exciting. And then I think our last thing happening we're working on is the virtual tastings. So this is totally an idea that we stole from a neighboring vineyard that's doing it somewhere in Virginia. But hey, why not? Where the details are to be worked out. But basically, if you would like to have
you set up your own wine tasting at home. You can get the wine, and then we'll like do a Zoom or a FaceTime or something with you, and then we can walk you through the wines you're tasting and answer direct questions or anything else. So I think that'll be up on our, the usual places, Facebook, website, email. If you're interested in that, we'll have those details coming soon. I think that is our whole.
Fantastic.
Next week, we're going to talk about whites.
And next week, we're going to talk about whites and drink the
Drink
Albariño.
the
And I think we'll
talk about whites, beer, crab cakes.
Yeah, I think I know we'll open at Albariño 2019. I think we're going to pick an old Albariño, a 10 or a 12 or something along that, 8 maybe, and see how it's aging.
Yeah. And we will, we'll definitely talk about kind of which whites can age, how long they age, what our experience has been, why they're made the way they're made, etc. Okay, I think 5:55. I think we've covered everything. Any last questions? I see lots of fun. Oh, by the way, the cake in that dinner was really good. Just saying. It was really good for those who can't hear me. I know I didn't get any of the cake. The chocolate cake's really good. We didn't make a lot of options because we wanted to be able to not be too confused. But it's worth the whole dinner just for the dessert. That's kind of my thing. That's my closing.
And you're sticking with it.
And I'm sticking with it.
All right.
So thank you to everybody who keeps
Thanks,
following
everybody.
us on this and coming out. It's so much fun to see everybody at the vineyard, even from far away and waving from outside the car and everything. Can we get it in Delaware? I don't know. We'll have to talk. We'll come up with this. We'll come up with a way. So you can always email us if you need some special system, and we'll see what we can work out. Maybe we can meet somewhere halfway. Anyway, take care, everybody. Great to see you, and we're off soon. Okay, you can hang up on us